Max's anger puts him 49 points away in the championship, and more importantly, only 1 point away from the race ban. Lots to talk about after the Spanish Grand Prix. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. Now here's a bald guy and some Indian.
Hey man, how are you? You good?
Amazing. This was, yeah, I was angry after the race because of what happened. We'll dive into it. But yeah, at least there's a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
It won't be boring. It wasn't boring, right? Well, at least that's the good thing.
If I'm honest, it was a typical Formula One race where it was very interesting for a couple of laps. Very kind of dull strategy playing out for quite a chunk.
I think so.
Not dull, but it was just, if you're not into just watching the strategies unfold, there wasn't that much going on. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this just got interesting.
Yeah.
So lots to talk about. I'm guessing the first chunk of this is going to be quite Max Verstappen focused because there is a lot to talk about with his race. So where do you want to begin?
What's your view on the incident first? We'll talk about the penalty later. Intentional or not?
Yeah, intentional. Definitely intentional. Like, I don't know. This goes back to, I know there's a lot of Verstappen fans who are going to hate me right now. I'm sure alongside the Hamilton fans, but this is like the worst of Verstappen in my opinion. And it doesn't happen that often, to give him credit. Like the things that line up for me are, there's Mexico last year where he could have just taken the kind of, okay, look, I got taken the better off for once, like the rare occasion. But instead, he literally like drove Norris off the track, got lucky with a penalty there as far as I'm concerned as well.
Yeah.
And then there was Hungary last year where he just got angry and drove into Hamilton. Was that last year or the year before?
Yeah.
It's last year, yeah. Drove into Hamilton as well. Look, Max's like uncompromising, aggression. It's incredible to watch as a fan, but if you're just talking about like the sporting nature of it, I love that he does it because 9 times out of 10 it works out. But occasionally he takes it way too far. And today he took it too far. And a lot of people are bringing up one instance of some particular person that we love losing a championship over doing something similar. Villeneuve in Jerez, Schumacher.
Yeah.
Intentionally just driving into someone. I mean, it did look a lot like he just and it did look a lot like he just intentionally drove into someone. And they gave him 3 penalty points. They could have very easily just given him 4 and a race ban for Canada. Like they could have, realistically.
The 10-second penalty was a joke.
Yeah, it should have been more. But it was enough.
The whole thing is, I think that I didn't expect Max to be in this kind of mood, but look, since you cover the entire race weekend, right? So I'm looking at his quotes and his interviews throughout the race weekend, be it on Friday, Thursday, and even after qualifying. You could sense that the vibes were not there.
Yeah.
Once he was out qualified by, I think, 3/10, he was quite blunt in saying that, okay, the championship is, I'm not talking about the championship, Red Bull is, which is...
I noticed, I knew that was happening before even seeing his quotes, because all of his fans were like, yeah, this championship's over. And I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, fans are fans. They have to do that, right? It's a bit like religion. Sorry, religious guys. They have to do that. Yeah.
I'm not going there.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Apologies if anyone got offended.
No. If you're offended, please subscribe. Those are the rules. Them's be the rules.
Them's be the rules. Them's the rules. What happened is, I think it was on Friday where he was a bit confident with how the long runs were, and they were good. He was slightly quicker than both McLarens. That's why today I was very confident. I thought he would have the edge, or maybe at least he'll be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
He was competitive, but the Red Bull was a slower car compared to McLaren. It was quite obvious. It's just that I think once you realize that the technical directive has not drastically slowed down McLaren, Which, look, if he was honest, it was never going to happen. I mean,
They didn't bring
everyone.
any changes to the weekend.
It would. It would. Apparently, it did, but
No,
not
but
to
I
a
mean,
large
McLaren
extent.
didn't bring any changes to their
Yeah,
car.
they brought the wing. They tested it in Imola
Yeah.
last weekend, I think. So apparently they tested it already. They just brought the same one back, so you don't have to disclose it again.
Right,
It's
yeah.
it just seems that once that happened, his shoulders kind of dropped. Every time when he was talking something, he was very dismissive about, okay, this is where I am and stuff like that. Look, it's fine to be in that mode. It's just that he was waiting for a trigger, waiting for something to go wrong. We'll get to the Red Bull strategy as well, because until that last moment where the safety car came, it was spectacular. The way they turned the tables on McLaren despite having that, you can say,
Yeah.
conventionally slower car. That's impressive, and that takes a lot of brains and a lot of brinkmanship in terms of, finding, being able to manipulate races when you have a slower car, being able to use different tire sets and everything. Look, that is something that is brilliant, and that is
I've
something
already-
Hannah Schmitz does not get enough credit, at least these days.
Annoyingly, I've already seen just a ton of people on Twitter today immediately like, Red Bull strategy. And it's like, no, they just got unlucky. The strategy was great. If the safety car hadn't come out, I mean, they were pushing for second for a lot of the race. They had guaranteed a podium regardless. There was no other strategy they could have gone with where they could have even thought about, pushing for a race win. Oscar was just too good today. We'll get to that later on. But yeah, there was a great strategy. Just it was a very much what Max likes to do, which is this was an
Play
all
the percentages, right? The thing is, you play
it's
the
what Max
percentages when
likes
you're.
to do as well, right? It was an all or nothing strategy where they left themselves with no wiggle room at the end because that was that,
Yeah.
But those are the games you play, and the big teams play those games. And if you go conservative, like if you went conservative, he was either finishing third or fifth anyway, so.
Yeah, he would have been third, right?
Yeah.
Even if he just mirrors McLaren's strategy today, he would have been third.
Maybe
There was-
fourth, because Ferrari tried a similar
Yeah, but
strategy. So,
Ferrari already screwed things up when already. So it's.
but
it would have been-
it was a game to play, an all or nothing
Yeah,
kind of game to play.
They
and
made McLaren sweat, and that's something especially on a track like this where McLaren quite clearly had 2 to 3 tenths over Red Bull, which
Yeah.
was obvious.
Yep.
And it's just, when you're calculating all these things, it just seemed that once, and I think for Max, once he saw those hard tires, that's when the red mist came.
Yeah.
And once that happens with him, I think he just loses the plot. The bottom line is, honestly, the bottom line is he should have been banned. That's my
yeah. I mean, he should have been disqualified from the race or got a ban for the next race. I think.
Yeah.
My problem is, it's not even the incident itself; it's the clear intentionality of the incident that pisses me off. Like, you can't do that, and it was the same in Mexico last year. I said, he's very lucky. Last year in Mexico, he got a 10-second penalty because he literally just drove Norris off the track. Like, if Norris didn't move out of the way, they were just crashing into each other. I'm sorry, but in modern F1, you can't do that. And in fact, as we just pointed out, you couldn't do that in the 90s. Like, Schumacher
point in
did
time, you
that and
shouldn't
got
be doing
banned
that.
from a championship. He lost the championship over it. So, on the flip side of that, I think this now, Max has just thrown the championship away from himself as well. And I think he's going to have that realization afterwards. Whether he'll actually admit it to himself is a different thing, but because
looks like he's not going to.
people with that mentality don't anyway. Nobody does. If at the end of the day, you say if you qualified better, you would have won the race or something. That's what you get in your head instead. But
We're not even 10 minutes.
no,
into the
I know.
podcast and you're taking things at loads.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, you don't expect these championship mentality people to have that opinion. They'll always just say it's not my fault, not back them. Everything else, it's fine. I'm okay with that. But he threw his championship away today, I think, because he would have been still, 25, 26 points off the championship. A
He
little
was
bit more.
25 points off right now, so he would have been 35 points behind.
Okay.
Now he's 49 points
You're
behind.
putting yourself in, you're still in a DNF and some capable
Yeah, that's fine.
points.
35 points is okay. It happens.
49 is Oscar and Lando.
2 race wins.
Oscar can DNF twice and Max can win twice, and he'll only be ahead by 1 point. So, he's basically Lando last year was so outside chance by the time we got to Miami with 50 odd points. So Max has put himself in that position in the second fastest car as well now. So
Yeah, it is the
that's
second
it.
fastest car, and it's not look. And a lot of people love to treat. First of all, the assumptions that Max will get half a second more than anyone else out of a car. That is
He can
utter
only
rubbish.
drive as fast as a car can go. So it doesn't-
Exactly.
you can make all the arguments in the world and whatever, and you can say like, well, look at where Yuki is. And it's like, yeah, well, that's great. Like you can say all that, but at the end of the day, physics are physics. Max can only drive the car as fast as a car can go, and Yuki being far off, you can put it down to two different things. You can either say that the car has been set up perfectly for
there ran
Max.
a different setup as well for UK.
Yeah.
Bashe came out and explained that it was not the.
But like, you can either
Things are
say
not
it's one of two things: either that the car is very, very tricky to drive, or that it's focused on Max. Even if we give Max the benefit of the doubt, say it's not focused on Max, it's just very tricky to drive.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from the fact it's still a very fast car to drive. Like
Exactly.
Leclerc, for example, over the years has won in Ferraris that are very, very tricky to drive. You know what I mean? Like Alonso 2012 extracted the most from a very tricky to drive car. That doesn't mean that, you know, the Ferrari was the seventh fastest car. No, Alonso was in a car that was very tricky to drive and was second or third fastest throughout the season, and he consistently extracted it. Max is doing that now. It doesn't make the car a tractor. The car is still the second fastest car. It's just very tricky to extract
And it's
the pace
not.
from.
And look, it's just cope. If your reaction to what happened today is that, oh, Max was never going to win the title here. Come on. At some point in time, you have to be honest about the fact that he was, in the worst case scenario, he was going to finish P5. In the worst case scenario, that was what, 10 points? Right? He dropped 9 more points. And even in the best case scenario, if first of all, if he did not make the mistake at the restart, Leclerc was not jumping him. There was no chance.
Yeah.
Also, if you and this was something that George pointed out quite clearly, that what happened is after the first couple of laps, the tires fell off a cliff for both George and Charles. Why did this happen? Because the tires they just put those tires in to gain track position, and they were already worn out to a large extent.
Yeah.
So once that had happened, Max was always going to jump them. Once, by the way, a lot of people, again, everyone in the red mist has not seen this thing. Once Max let George by, even then, afterwards, he was right on his tail and about to overtake him at the checkered flag.
Yeah.
If all the fuckery that he did for those 8 or 9 laps, if he had not done that, it was fine. He would have been able to finish P3, and then it would have been a 35-point lead instead of a 49-point lead.
Even if you finish P5, like whatever, you get those, you bank
that is
those
also
points. It's a
fine.
long championship, and
This was a throwing your toys out of the pram moment. And look, if you're not going to be honest about these things, then there's no point. It's very easy to sit and blame
they're gonna blame
Red Bull,
Bull.
that this is strategy, this is that. I'm sorry, that is not the case. Just a trick question: when was the last time we had a safety car in Barcelona?
3 years ago.
2022. Yeah.
So
That was when
the safety car
Leclerc had a
expectation
DNF.
is low in Spain. Like it's always low in Spain. So
Exactly.
like it was a
Throughout the
really
weekend,
good
we had
strategy.
zero safety cars, by the way.
Yeah, it
Zero.
was a really good strategy.
Yeah.
You just look. You
Sometimes you
can't
get boxed into it, and
you
the
can't
thing
win
is,
them
look,
all. You know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
I don't know.
The thing is, what annoys me about the conversation, just obviously, fanboys will be fanboys, but it's like there's so much to praise Max for constantly,
And we do. We do a lot.
Yeah, but it's just this constant, like, as soon as something like this happens, you have to be willing to say, well, yeah, he fucked up there. You know, like if you can't, then it's fine. But as soon as you get into the thing of it's the 7th fastest car, Red Bull fucked the strategy. It's just, for me, I'm just like, I'm switching off. It's like, look, there's no point having a conversation with you because it's
You
like
can't argue with it, right?
we could praise everything Red Bull and Max did up until that safety car restart, and if you can't do that, but also kind of be obvious and honest and say, well, also look, Red Bull was boxed in the corner and Max lost his shit. Like if you can't just admit those two things, then it's like, right, well, we can't really have a conversation then. So
The utter foolishness of a lot of now let's jump into one probably a contentious, one of the biggest copes that I've seen. Why did Red Bull tell Max to give up the position to George?
Did you see the FIA digging at that though? Did you see it? Did you see the FIA document?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
like,
I will say, right. So, for anyone who doesn't know, the FIA in the document had noted that Max was unhappy because Red Bull had asked him to give up the position because they thought that the rule had been broken, and then, just to pour gasoline on the fire, basically,
so funny, by the
in
way.
brackets it says we had decided later that we wouldn't have penalised them for it anyway. Which was just like kind of a trying to wind people up. Look,
by the way, respect.
yeah.
FIA to
I
do
mean,
that.
absolute like baiting people into
Exactly.
arguments. We live for that at this podcast. Fabulous stuff. I think they also mentioned, we'll talk about the Charles Leclerc thing. They said that, basically there could have been a penalty coming for that as well, but because both
Which
drivers...
is even
Yeah. So they essentially they must be just going on Twitter and being like, guys, you want to really wind up the Max Verstappen fans today?
Yeah.
Look, to be honest, though, the thing is, I think realistically, as per the regulations, and GP came on and said, look, these are the rules. As per the regulations, Max did gain a lasting advantage. I think realistically, though, the problem is, like lap 1, turn 1, and like a safety car restart, sometimes
I
they
think
do
the
kind of
problem
say...
was with the what's it called? That thing. The front axle was almost alongside his mirror with Max's mirror.
It was ahead of his mirror, but it was very...
And the thing is, for Red Bull, it didn't have enough time. What they did was they made a strategic call that instead of getting a penalty or a 5-second or whatever penalty, let's do one thing. Since we know that, again, I might be entirely wrong, but at least this premise seems to be a bit more legible than whatever nonsense we've seen. They also calculated the same thing that George was saying after the race, that we had tires worth 3 or 4 laps, that's it. After that, our tires were dead. And they were dead. If Max had just stepped back, just given up the position, within a couple of laps, he would have overtaken both me and Charles. And this is George saying it, and you could see it in evidence. But I think Red Bull also made this calculation. But once the red mist came for Max, I think it became very hard to reason with him.
Yeah.
That's something. Look, it happens once or twice a season.
It's very, very seldom that it happens. To be fair, to give
And
Max
he'll be
credit.
back. And he'll be back in Canada and not do that. But the
He's got
problem
2 weeks off now to relax, but it's just unlike the other 2 times he's done this.
Honestly,
the
it doesn't
problem
look
is,
good.
unlike the other 2 times he's done this time he's thrown a lot away. And he's in a position where he shouldn't have. This is going to be a tight championship, I think. Because again, it's not like it's a straightforward, he's just fighting Oscar. Lando just won Monaco. Those 2 are going to take points off each other. He's thrown, as far as I'm concerned, he's thrown the championship away this weekend. If we end the championship where he's 6 or 7 points off the lead by the end, that's going to be a big kick.
Who is he going to blame?
No, he's going to blame everyone else. His fans will blame everyone else. But the reality will be, it will be on him for this kind of...
And look, the thing is, the thing about Max is, even if publicly he won't admit he's wrong, you can see in his actions that he just goes back, he analyzes, and he tends to make the right calls afterwards. The best example is the 21 to 22 transition, where in 21 he was just see the gap and go for it. And in 2022, you saw at the start of the season when he was battling Leclerc, he was giving him margin because he knew this was the one. And that's learning that he tends to do. I hope he does it again. I think the whole fact and the whole I think right now he's reached a point where it seems that the fact that Red Bull is not the fastest car, it's starting to play on his head a lot more than it should have ideally. He's not accepted the reality that is there. And look, it happens with drivers, but if you're not going to accept that and always have this idea that, okay, I'm not fighting for the championship, I'm not winning it. He says that a lot of times now with conviction. It's going to reflect in your actions on the track. And right now, his first statement is, I'm not in the championship anyway. And look, that's basically a cop-out. That's something that you're
Yeah.
trying to reason yourself into saying that, okay, I made a mistake, but who cares? I'm not winning the title anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
what you're doing. And that's not going to help you in the long run because
No.
he's the one who'll blame himself. Look, if somehow Red Bull is going to have an upgrade in, I think, in a couple of races, they'll have their next set of upgrades. If somehow the Red Bull is within a tenth or so of McLaren, and by the end of the season there is a scenario where he loses the championship by what, 4, 5, 6, 10 points. Today is the day which he's actually going to repent because
Yeah, yeah.
24 points. He just what he was getting
this is-
15. He left 14 points on the table for no reason whatsoever.
The basic I've seen from a mesh of tweets, the basic mesh I've seen has been he was never in the championship anyway, which is just hilarious because it's like a week ago you weren't saying, or like 2 weeks ago you weren't saying this when he won Imola. They were, championship on. And it's just very like cut and dry. The other thing is, it doesn't matter. Well, that's it now. He'll go to Mercedes, and it's like, okay, like whatever. I just don't know. I think like the idea that
one Verstappen fan
up until today he was in a championship though because like of what I said. One, second fastest car. Two, the constructors title is very easy for McLaren to win because they have two fast drivers in the car. But as we've just seen the last 2 weekends, those drivers will take points off each other. So Max has a Raikkonen championship ahead of him, and instead of playing that, he threw his toys out of the pram and just threw away 9 points for no reason whatsoever. Maybe more, but 9 points minimum he's just thrown away. And
just threw a fit. That was a childish fit, and that is costing.
I've said that Max is in like the top 3 or 4 drivers on my list at the moment for like all-time greats.
Yeah.
And what did I say last week? I said it depends though, because things like that can change very quickly. At the end of 2013, Vettel would have been like top 5 of, like he was building himself up to that list, because at the end of 2013 we talked about, like people talked about, I know I did, talked about Vettel in the same way we're talking about Verstappen now, in terms of just uncompromising, that was what Vettel was like. And people who don't think that, I don't think were watching at the time personally, because that's what everyone was saying. And then after that, he started like, there was mistakes, throwing, went to Ferrari, which was the biggest hit. But we could easily be having this conversation about Verstappen in 2 years. He could go to another team, get pissed off at this one, never win a championship again. And in 5 years' time, it could be, he was good for a few years,
Look, the problem that I see is that if he doesn't accept the reality that is there and continues to bicker about, okay, the car, this is the best the car can do, it's going to hurt him. Because look, you lose the championship this season just because look, this thing might get repeated. He might start being a bit more aggressive in the future because he'll think that, okay, I'm not in the championship anyways, and then he'll play the percentage game even more and then lose more points. And look, he's not in a situation to do that.
The
11
other
penalty points in the
other
11
big
penalty points. That's
the other big problem as well is like Formula One is very short-term thinking. Like think of how perception of Verstappen from Imola to today, right? Like the shift in like, well, what the fuck is he doing? But my point on this was more at the moment, right? Verstappen could go anywhere, like Vettel could again. Like Vettel could after 2013. He could kind of pick and choose teams. He wanted to go to Ferrari to emulate his hero in Michael Schumacher and whatnot, which was a mistake. But I get the point. But like Verstappen is the best driver on the grid right now. I don't know why I did that. He is, let's be honest, the best driver on the grid right now. But Formula One teams love their new shiny toy. And if he gives up on this championship and Oscar starts dominating it over Norris because Verstappen's just not there anymore, and, all of that. First, Piastri becomes the new shiny toy and his buying power goes away. And if he's not in a championship next year, you know how quickly the new guy comes in. Yeah. And it's no longer, it's not like I'll just go wherever I want. It's, no, we're good. Because, like, say he sticks around this year with Red Bull, and like I said earlier, if Russell wins the championship next year, the idea of Verstappen going to to Mercedes automatically, as we've talked about, is done, because it's like, well, we don't need you anymore. We've got Russell now.
Yeah.
Or Piastri wins this year, and for whatever reason, he goes to Mercedes. That's it. Like, I know it all sounds crazy right now, but Formula One changes so quickly. And that whole thing of you're only as good as your last race, does seem to really, really count in this sport.
Yeah.
Like really count in this sport.
It's not only about how you place yourself within teams, because again, a lot of people have come up with a lot of rumors that maybe Mercedes has the best power unit. Then there are others that apparently what I have heard is Aston Martin is quite way ahead in terms of car development, and Honda is doing well. And they might be a team that stands out next season. There are possibilities and there are options that are there. It's just that if again he can keep throwing the toys out of the pram, the problem that is going to come is you become a driver with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
You cannot be that, and at some point teams will think about it, right?
The thing of today, if you want to look at today as a perfect example, like one of the things that Toto talked about when Russell was coming in against Hamilton was he was talking about how he had to be very careful with managing that because he had that situation in the past with Hamilton and Rosberg, right? And at the end of the day, even though Antonelli's been having some struggle, it's clear that Toto wants to build Antonelli up in the way he is, right? Yeah. Russell gets along with Antonelli, and if Verstappen starts this attitude and this like driving into drivers and really like pushing it, which he could do if the championship then starts falling further and further away, he could do that. And that could be like, you know, you could get a situation where they call up Toto and Toto goes, look, I don't really want to spend 50 million on a headache next year when I've got Antonelli, who I want to build up, and Russell, who is consistently delivering every single weekend. And at the end of the day, it's like, sure, Max will deliver more consistently than Russell. Max is more aggressive, slightly faster, all this stuff. But if we have the best engine next year and we have a very good car, Russell, we know, can deliver. I want to build up Antonelli anyway. Why would I spend, 50 million, 60 million a year for a headache? These are all the things that start coming up.
Someone who has, he's often said that he talks about integrity and doing things the right way and stuff like that. If Toto Wolff was the team principal that of Max Verstappen this weekend, how would he have actually handled the whole thing? Because the first question Sky Sports is going. By the way, I'm not sure you saw the interview. Max had a pretty tense interview with the Sky Sports lady. I think she's Rachel Brooks. Okay. And the kind of conversation that she had was, she said that she was quite blunt, which is a bit surprising for me as well. Where she said that in Imola you pull out a move which is probably one of the greatest of all time, and then you come to Barcelona and you do stuff like this, which takes the sheen off from the stuff you've done. And Max, first of all, he was a bit taken aback, and he said that, you think so? And she said, yeah, not me, a lot of people. Like, oh, okay. And Max was like, okay, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
And he was a bit taken aback by that. And I won't be surprised if next week or something we see a Sky Sports embargo or something.
Yeah. Like this is the thing for me. It's just like, I don't know. I just don't like that type of, like, I'm all up for aggressive moves. Like his Imola move was spectacular. His driving in Monaco, where they decided kind of like, let's just go all or nothing. Brilliant. Yeah. Like even like in Saudi, it was a small mistake that he got annoyed about, but he drove brilliantly after that. And, he was pushing for the win. Like there's Suzuka, spectacular race, aggressive race in qualifying as well. He was spectacular. Like Max is constantly brilliant. Today is just like that's not racing. Yeah. Like you can't just drive. Yeah, it's just not racing.
By the way, this is coming from, just cards on the table. This is coming from Michael Schumacher fan. I'll be the first one to admit that F1 drivers are not saints.
Yep.
Every driver, all of them have done something wrong. Baxter had this tweet that Max will never be the GOAT because of things like this today. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's already Lewis, and he said that that's why Lewis is the greatest of all time. And Lewis lied to the stewards. He was a part of a fishy tire test. Everyone knows it was illegal. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Plus,
every driver has these shady moments.
The perfect example of Lewis is 2016 Abu Dhabi. When it was Rosberg's championship at the end of the day. It was a done deal, essentially. and he tried to back him up into, to Vettel.
And the thing is, look,
it's just
Nico continues to talk about this thing, and he's actually right when he says that earlier in 2016 in Monaco, Nico was struggling in the wets, and Lewis was behind him. The team told him that let Lewis through. Since Lewis was his direct rival in the championship, he could have said no. He could have said no, I won't let Lewis through. But when time came in Abu Dhabi, Lewis did the exact thing. He completely disregarded the team orders. And again, I'm fine with Lewis doing that. Every driver drives for himself. So I don't have any issues. It's just that
that stuff is all fine with me, though. That's competition. That's being the best. The limits are Max in Mexico last year nearly driving a competitor into the wall. Max today just flagrantly crashing into another driver, not on. And Schumacher 97, I'm sorry, but he deserved the ban. You can't do this stuff. And in fact, let's be honest, he was quite lucky in 96 as well. Or no, 95.
94.
With Damon Hill. Yeah. Was it 94 with Hill? Sorry. Yeah. He was quite lucky there as well. That was in Adelaide, right?
That's a bit fishy. I mean, as many times I've seen the onboards, I could see Michael is not looking at where he's turning at that very moment. Again, I won't go into that.
But the point, 97 was clear cut. You just can't do it. And today, I can get why people bring it up today. So, look, I love how Max drives generally, most of the time. But this was over the line for me. So
just before we wrap this thing up, title battle, where do you think the whole thing lies with Red Bull?
I think it's done. The problem is, it's just 50 points. It's basically 50 points. 50 points is a long way to come back in the second fastest car. So unless they bring a big upgrade that makes them the fastest car, they're the second fastest car and they're close. But the problem is, if you're within 20, 30 points, I think there's a long enough timeline in the season to come back, especially with, like I said, Oscar and Norris taking points off each other. The problem is, I don't think this is also the last time we'll see this from Max, because I think things are going to steam up again at some point. Obviously, you're constantly on the back foot and you're constantly gambling, and trying to throw the dice and do things here and there. And if he got that annoyed today over essentially going on the hard tires, which was all they had left, he's clearly in a state of mind that's going to make him very annoyed throughout. So I don't know. I think it's going to take a miracle for him to come back now. I don't want to write Max off ever, but he's just made it so much harder for himself in a situation where I don't care what anyone says. The championship wasn't off. He was still within a range where he could have played the game. Norris and Oscar are fighting each other. But I think it's over. I don't know. I think it's Norris versus Piastri. And even then, it's probably Piastri in the long run.
I don't think the championship's over in any which way. 49 points, again, it's a lot. But how big do you think the gap was between McLaren and Red Bull today? Couple of tenths? 3 tenths?
Yeah, it wasn't that much, yeah. It was a couple of tenths.
So it's basically in the window. And again, this was a very extreme race in terms of the tire degradation, the temperatures. This is something, again, we talked about last time as well. That these are the areas where Red Bull tends to struggle. Yeah. And what we also saw in Max's stints was that at least in the first 10 to 12 laps, he was right on par with both the McLaren drivers. It was just the later time when the tires were just not there. And that's why he went for the three stopper, and I think it could have worked. It's just that in his last stint, the tires were his tires were 13 lap old, and Oscar's tires were at 20 laps, and Oscar was lapping faster. So that's where the whole thing kind of turned.
Yeah.
But this was a much, much hotter track. We're moving to Canada, which is a much colder version of it. And look, I won't even blame Red Bull for where they are in terms of championship. Of course, there are elements where they are wrong, because they fucked up a lot last season when the development direction went completely wrong. But since they've course corrected, they've kept McLaren within range. It's
They've
not
been
that
doing a
McLaren is
brilliant job, yeah.
exactly, and people don't realize it. Once a misstep is made, you pay for it. But you have to realize that since then they've continued to persevere and keep
I
developing the
heard
car.
3 separate people today say, without Max, Red Bull is a midfield team. And I can only laugh at that because it's just hilarious. Like, I'm sorry, but it's hilarious.
It would be a midfield team for a year because that's how the car has been designed. Only Max can probably race it, or maybe a Leclerc, or maybe a George.
Yep.
But after a year, they will build the car again.
George or
Team is
Leclerc.
there. Yeah.
Yep.
The pedigree is there. Ultimately, they'll be back to where they're supposed to. And
George and Leclerc have both driven extremely tricky cars and gotten on top of them.
Yeah.
You put either of those in the car, they're, like, I'm not saying this year, but like 22, Leclerc is winning that championship in the Red Bull if you put him in there, or George. 23, Perez is winning the championship in that car. So let's, and 24, like, they had such a good start to the season. Like, Perez literally it was 1-2s for most of the races. That, if that was a George or Leclerc, you put them in there, they're winning that championship as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but it's not a midfield team. It's just a car that's very tricky to drive. And there are other drivers who can drive tricky cars. Yeah. So, yeah, it's
and
just...
look, Red Bull has found itself in this situation. Even if it has, look at this. Yeah,
can I put this the simplest way?
Yeah.
Red Bull is in this situation because this is how Red Bull works. So at the end of the day, Red Bull works by maximizing its car towards one side of the garage. Red Bull has essentially worked this way since day one. It did this with Vettel. Yeah, and it's done it again with Verstappen. So to say it's a midfield team is just to say, right, if it wasn't Verstappen in there, if it was Ricciardo in there, for example, and he never left, they would have just maximized the car for Ricciardo and he would have been winning championships. If they had brought someone else in, like George or, Piastri or whoever it was, they would have just maximized the car. Red Bull has always cared more about the drivers' championship because that's better for marketing than the constructors. So it's just a silly
also
take.
Just this thing that when it comes to Max, he can drive these extreme cars, and he demands the more sensitive front end. And maybe other drivers don't. That's also the case. Like,
so
Alonso
they would have gone in a different direction. They would have just gone in whoever the fastest drivers is direction.
Yeah. And then the second driver adapts to it. I mean, even Mercedes had that, right? Mercedes is not, when Mercedes is building a car, it's taking driver feedback.
McLaren is an outlier in this situation.
Yeah.
Like, this is not normal.
Yeah. But McLaren also has 2 drivers that are very equal.
Adaptable as well. Very adaptable
as well.
Like, I know Lando gets a lot of shit, but we know that the McLaren has been very tricky to drive constantly. Lando has adapted for whatever reason. Unfortunately for him, he can't seem to adapt to this car this year. Or at the very least, Oscar has adapted better. A lot of it's mental. Yeah. But like, there's a lot of drivers who can drive tricky cars, and Red Bull midfield, I'm sorry, absolute bollocks. Anyone who says that is just a or a Verstappen fanboy.
And just to cap it off, I still think the championship is on if Max keeps his head. Because
it depends how the next 2 or 3 races go, right? Doesn't it?
Yeah, 49 points is a lot. But it's what
especially when you get a race ban.
Oh yeah, by the way, by the end of this month he'll lose 3 points, so
end of June he still has 2 races to go. And even then he only loses 2 points, and then he's back.
He'll be at 9, right?
No, he'll be at 9.
11
he's at because his 12 points is a ban, right? So he's at 9. Sorry, but the rest of the points don't go until October.
Yeah.
So if he loses 2 points, if he loses 2 points and gets another 3 points in a race, that's a ban. And the precedent is there of a ban now, so they can't restrict it. Like, they can't say, oh well.
Honestly, they restricted it this time because there is a precedent for what happens when you intentionally crash into someone. Vettel did it to Lewis, 27 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. He got a 10-second stop and go penalty, and I think for today's day and age, it might be a 4 penalty points. So he would have gotten that. Ideally, he didn't. So, a lot of Max Verstappen fans, they have a tendency to say that FIA is out to get Max. He got away.
He was lucky today.
Easy.
With it. 10-second penalty, very lucky. When they in the document, in the race document, and we'll cap this off here because I know we're 40 minutes in, we've got lots more to talk about.
Yeah.
But they said, in fact, here it's the driver of car number 1 was clearly very unhappy with his team request to give the position.
Yo, why? By the way, did this nonsense not make you laugh? What the fuck are they doing? Why are they talking about his feelings and stuff?
I know, yeah.
Who cares? What kind of... They're literally baiting people now.
But-
FIA has become such... The entire debriefs, I just went through them just before we started.
But like they basically said the car 1 suddenly accelerated and collided, and it was undoubtedly caused by him. Like they were one step away of saying he intentionally crashed into him.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like Max is very lucky he didn't get a stop-go penalty or whatever and a race ban for next week or for Canada. Like he's going to have to be very careful for the next 2 races because especially like if he crashes with someone at the British Grand Prix, like he'll end up with a race ban. Like, that's in front of British fans. Do you think they're going to be nice to Verstappen? Like, it's just, you want to see the FIA.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on from one driver, one elite F1 legend having a shitty race to another elite F1 driver having a shitty race. Lewis Hamilton. Oh, right, that was a bad one.
Yeah. Well, I had someone ask because I just before this podcast I recorded my your biggest F1 questions, and one of the questions I got asked because I asked some friends and stuff to send in stuff quickly, and one of them was, "Is Hülkenberg now better than Hamilton?"
Wait. I'll answer this question.
Yes.
No. This is not the correct answer. He always was.
He always was. Yeah. Oh, can we just?
Wait. No. Since you've touched on it, if Nico Hülkenberg had Toto Wolff as his manager and not Valtteri Bottas, Hülkenberg would have been driving for Mercedes in 2017 and would probably be a world champion by now. Now you go ahead.
Hülkenberg is incredibly underrated. He is incredibly underrated. And as much as I like to dig at Hamilton on this podcast, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to admit that Hülkenberg is better than Hamilton.
Have you not seen the 2013 F1 Korean Grand Prix?
Look, I'm sorry,
he held back Lewis Hamilton while driving a Sauber. Which he's, again, by the way, a decade later, he's still driving a fucking Sauber. And he's still beating him.
Can we just... I know I bash... You know what? I think this is what I'll do. I normally bash Hamilton every weekend for lots of silly little things, and I like to wind fans up. But can I just say that I think it was just the car. I mean, of course, a Sauber is going to beat a Ferrari that is also on the podium. I mean, of course. And if only Hamilton had a qualified worse, like Leclerc. One of the other questions I got today actually was, is if Hamilton's washed, is also Alonso washed or something along those lines? And my response was, Alonso isn't losing to Hülkenberg in a Ferrari today. Yeah, look, I don't know. Like, there was a lot going on there, but brilliant performance by Hülkenberg. I wasn't really paying attention to Hamilton because there was obviously other stuff going on. And when I saw at the end Hülkenberg passing Hamilton, I was like, wait, hold on. Has Hamilton got like a car issue? Is his strategy bad?
There was
so
some
tell
issue.
Me.
Yeah, because
there must be an excuse, or is it just racism?
No, I'm not going there. I think it might be a case that he had the soft tires that he had. They didn't really have any life left, and Hülkenberg had a much better case, much better tire. I think Hülkenberg was behind Hadjar as well, so he jumped. I think he might have had a fresh set of softs. Probably that helped. Because even in the end, he was just quickly closing up to Verstappen and George as well. Yeah, maybe in that sense, look, Hülkenberg got lucky to jump Lewis. But even if we leave that to one side, this was not a good race for Lewis in any which way.
No.
Because, that's... one thing, I think
he did qualify ahead of Leclerc, right? Leclerc saved a set of tires, only did one run or something, right? And Hamilton. So Hamilton
Hamilton qualified ahead because he he did his lap right at the end.
Yeah,
That was the only reason.
That's all fine, but like he qualified ahead, but then like within short order in the race, he was like 10 or 12 seconds behind before the safety car even came out. Like I tweeted something, I was like
He was 10 seconds behind.
no, what I tweeted was, I was like, oh, that's a bad stop for Hamilton. I was like, obviously that's cost him 3 seconds. Hamilton fans, what cost him the other 15? Yeah, because it was just, it's
It was
just
the same
like
excuse last time around.
yeah, like it was, the excuse last time was, oh, he was held up by everyone. It's like, yeah, but he still finished 50 seconds behind Leclerc. Like
That's a different pin code.
This is the second podium now for Leclerc, and honestly,
Third podium.
right? Yeah, sorry, and this is just like,
Yeah, third, right? It's his
is it
third
second
podium,
or
right?
third? I can't remember. I know it's a
I think
second at
he
least.
got one in Jeddah as well.
Maybe I can't
Might
remember.
have. Yeah.
I don't think so. I thought it was Oscar or Max Norris. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oscar, Max, Leclerc, Norris.
Was it? Okay. Well, like, look, at the end of the day, just from me now, I'm sorry, but like the excuses for Hamilton are dead. Like, it's just, this is race 9, and every other driver, including the rookies who had to move team, change engine, all of these different things, has now, after 6 or 7 races, got on top of the car. This is a 7-time world champion, one of the most experienced drivers on the grid. I'm sorry, but there's no excuses anymore. And like, as someone said about Alonso, yeah, I will stop giving Alonso excuses if this continues on for the rest of the season. But Alonso has adapted to different cars in this regulation.
I mean, I don't know. What
He's been very
continues
he's been very unlucky. He's behind Stroll this year.
He's sent a billionaire's kid into a complete mental breakdown, which we'll talk about, by the way.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
But no, my point is, look, Alonso, as I said in my answer to the question, my actual answer to the question was, Alonso's been very unlucky, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because the last 2 years, it has seemed like, at the very least, he has maximized that car most weekends. And I know I use 2023 as a like a excuse, if you want, a benchmark.
Yeah.
But as soon as he got a good car, he didn't maximize it 3 or 4 weekends. He maximized it every weekend that car was there. And like, even when he had a sniff of it in Brazil, he maximized it. Whereas Hamilton has had this constant wave of, oh, look, I'm brilliant now. Oh, I forgot how to drive. Oh, look, I'm brilliant now. Oh, I forgot how to drive. While his teammates have been consistently good. And at the start of this season, Hamilton had his, oh, look, I'm brilliant now, while Leclerc struggled a little bit with the car. And as soon as Leclerc got on top of the car, it's been where the fuck am I? I'm sorry, but you're getting like $100 million a year. You're a 7-time world champion. Like, if you were driving, bottom line for me, if you were driving Alonso's car and losing to your teammate, I'd be like, he's just collecting cash and driving around in the midfield. He's doing a Raikkonen. I'm okay with it. You can't go to Ferrari, talk about how you're going to push for your 8th, and then blame the car every weekend when your teammate's winning. So that is my thing. If Alonso next year has a front-running car and is doing the same, I will call Alonso washed as well. But if you're just a midfield driver getting a fucking paycheck for the minute, you deserve a little bit more slack than you do when you're a top driver at Ferrari. It's like, that's where Raikkonen eventually...
Right?
But that was where Raikkonen eventually was like, okay, you're taking the piss now, get out of Ferrari. Like, I'm sorry, you can't drive at a top team like that. And when Aston's a top team...
appear to be the case, right?
He'll get less slack if he drives. Yeah. But also, Alonso hasn't been driving poorly for a long time, whereas Hamilton has just been so inconsistent all the time, and blaming the car, and blaming the team, and blaming everything else. And it's like, right, there's no more excuses.
He's hurting his legacy, right?
Yeah. Sorry, but that is the case.
Just a quick question. What's his win-loss rate when it comes to winning against teammates and losing against them?
Before 2022 or since 2022?
Overall. So look,
I'd say overall.
I'll tell you. He started with Alonso.
Is it 44%?
He tied with Alonso.
Yeah.
He beat Heike. He lost a season to Button. Mm-hmm. He came to Rosberg. He lost to him as well in the season. He did well against Bottas. Great job.
Bottas beat him a third at a time in qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, my point being, he did well against him.
I had to get,
yeah,
I liked him.
I know. Yeah. Then he's lost to George, and he's going to get walloped by Leclerc. I'm not kidding. He's going to get walloped by Leclerc.
Going to.
I think it's time he retires. He's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
And it seems, look, what's going to happen is, okay, I'm going to, keep a hold of a very tiny thread of hope when it comes to Lewis, because his qualifying.
2026.
Yeah, no, not even that.
No?
Even this weekend, the qualifying, he wasn't too far behind Charles. He was a 10th here and there. The problem is when it comes to the race, and he's just nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 10, 11 seconds gap that Leclerc pulled out, and he did that after Leclerc kind of screwed his tires behind after chasing him. Again, Ferrari being absolute brilliant geniuses. Lewis was a second or so behind Lando when Leclerc just pretty much started attacking him. Lewis was around 8 or 9 seconds behind Lando by the time Leclerc was let through. Great job.
Yeah, ridiculous. I don't know. Just look, I think give him 2026, I guess, because it's a complete regulation change and you never know. But I still stand by, and I'm sorry, Hamilton fans, and I don't like this one. I genuinely mean, not to just wind people up, but I think it was a mistake by Ferrari anyway. Because at the end of the day, like, sure, bringing Hamilton on is exciting, all those things, but you're just adding another variable of a problem of a driver who has to get used to the car. Will it work out? Won't it work out? At a time when your drivers weren't, but the drivers weren't the fucking problem. Like, Carlos Sainz was closer to Leclerc than Hamilton has been this season on average. So your drivers weren't the problem, and it was just a mistake.
I don't know what to. It's not. Look, what's going to happen is, I think we've always predicted this. It's starting to look very painful when you see him on talking to Sky Sports and just continuing to say that.
Doesn't it go back to what we were saying about Vettel as well, though? In that, like, in Formula One, like, Verstappen right now is the best driver on the grid. That can fade very, very quickly, because if Verstappen stays at Red Bull, or even, like, if Verstappen goes to Mercedes and loses championships, your legacy just immediately, it's like, it was a car merchant, Yeah. Immediately it's just
even though he wasn't, even though Vettel wasn't, even though Lewis wasn't, it just turns into that.
Very
one
talented
major
drivers
question
who fail car merchant immediately.
Exactly. And Lewis is going to face that very soon, because what's going to happen is people are going to question one very, very simple thing. When Lewis dominated at Mercedes, he was teamed with Valtteri Bottas. He wasn't teamed with any of the top drivers, any of the upcoming drivers. Even Ocon was not allowed to race against Lewis because Toto didn't want to stir the boat in any which way. George only came in 2022 when there was no prospects of a title battle. There are going to be people that are going to start questioning this thing as well. That until and unless it was Rosberg, it got dragged to the last race in 14 and 16. Once Rosberg was out, a dominant car was there. Lewis won, did great, but it was with Bottas as a teammate. Was the car better than what the two of them showed? Or what was it?
Yeah, that's the question that starts popping up, isn't it? Just immediately. Yeah. So
he has to be honest with him, right? And I think he's starting to have that kind of realization, because his interview with Sky Sports, he said that the last parting question with him was, do you think now the team can work on some areas and fix the issues? And his answer was, maybe the issue is with me.
Yeah, it's sad as well, I just like, I genuinely you got to look back sometimes and think, Rosberg had the right idea to just do a James Hunt. I've won the championship and I'm out, and everyone can talk about it now, but I went out on a high, so.
Look, you have to credit Lewis for chasing something that was brilliant in terms of, look, you're going to Ferrari if you end up succeeding. He took a gamble. This was a gamble at best. The problem is, and people don't realize this thing, Charles Leclerc might be the best driver in Formula 1 right now. I said it. He might just be the best driver in Formula 1 right now, because he's not making any mistakes. His pace, he's smashing Lewis Hamilton. And again, you can say that he's washed or something.
He's a very quick driver regardless.
Maybe Charles is making him look washed. Maybe that is what is going on. And people do not give him the credit. Just like they did not give George the credit.
The biggest thing for me, and it's kind of, I love to say I told you so to the people watching, but what we said last year has just kind of come true, which was I think we just both kept. I know I kept saying it. I'm sure you did a couple of times, but it was just like, if you can't beat Russell at your own team, you're not going to beat Leclerc at his.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And it's worse. It's hammering right now.
You know what the biggest issue is with Lewis for me is that this was just inevitable for one reason in my head, which was when the car got shit in Mercedes, right? For both drivers, it happened at a couple of different times. Lewis in 2023, for a good chunk of the season, looked very good. There was the Monaco upgrade that just, for whatever reason, Russell couldn't get on top of. And
took him
Russell,
some time to get on top of it.
Sure. But Russell's entire demeanour during that whole time was the same as what we've seen with the best drivers on the grid always, which is, no, the car's fast because the other guy can drive it. I just need to fix what I'm doing, right? He went on to Lewis's setups, he got on top of the car, and eventually he got on top of it. And in 2024, he just whitewashed. You can say what you want about points, Hamilton fans, but if you look at any head-to-head, the points are because of the disqualification and the fucking DNF. He whitewashed Hamilton over the course of 2024 in every head-to-head, right? What Russell did was put his head down, said, right, the car's not the problem because the other guy's succeeding. I'm going to get on top of it. And he did that. And instead what Lewis did, which is where I think this fault is coming from, and he's doing it again at this team up until now, I think, is he kept going, well, no, it must be the car. It can't be me. And he kept doing that. And I think in 2022, if he had said, okay, no more experimental setups, clearly these regulations don't work with my driving style, it's time to adapt, maybe we'd see the best of Lewis Hamilton right now. But he was unwilling to do that, and he's still unwilling to do it. So I think it's over.
Why do you think he was?
Because he just assumed it wasn't him. Like, he just had that confidence it wasn't him, which is fine. But eventually, that's going to start coming into the back of your head that, oh, it must be me.
I think it was more a case of, and I think Lewis has been very vocal about it as well. He's been very transparent when it comes to something like this. He said that he was not a fan of simulators. He never did.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's a driver who, first of all, he's prodigiously talented even now, and he
100%,
was at the time as well. It's just that throughout his career, he started his career by being right at the level of some of the greatest F1 drivers ever. Fernando Alonso, he was right on his level. People say beat him. He was on par. They tied on points. No issues there. Since then, he's moved on from teammate to teammate, and until George, maybe Button is, I won't say Button, until George, he has not had a driver that is, in terms of raw talent, application, and ticking every box, he hasn't had that. And when he did, Lewis was already 37, 38, and he needed to adapt to a new car that didn't suit his driving style. And he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
That's where the problem came.
He just kept changing the setup, hoping
exactly. From 2014 to 2021, for Lewis, what worked was he had the fastest car on the grid, and it could be X, Y, Z. There will be variations here and there, but everyone knew in Mercedes, then whatever the car is capable, Lewis will be able to get that out of it. In 22, he had a driver who was getting more out of it. And that's where the experimental setups came into the picture. That's where other things came into the picture. Lewis wasn't willing to adapt because if you won 7 titles doing something that has worked for you, you don't change that. And that mentality has hurt him. And even though he's tried to adapt a bit, you can see it in the telemetry right now. It's just that you have Charles Leclerc in the other car. And Charles Leclerc might be the most talented and gifted driver in Formula 1 right now.
And part of this is because, obviously, Leclerc's been there for a very long time. So the development is around his lap times and so on, right? So there is all of those different things you could bring in that you could say about Max. You could, again, I think George needs credit for as well, because that was the case in Mercedes. It was developed, around Lewis. But the thing is, for this year, Lewis needs to adapt, because what Leclerc does, and this is what I've heard from anyone I've spoken to, and I'm pretty sure Leclerc admitted this year as well. Leclerc in FP1 just says, right, what's the fastest setup as per all of our simulations and whatnot. They give him that setup and he says, right, I'll adapt to this. And he just does that for the weekend. And either Leclerc is incredibly adaptable, or the car is, built kind of focused on his driving style, whatever you want to say about it. But that is clearly the fastest way to drive the car.
Yeah.
Hamilton needs to either adapt to that or not. And there's one
thing, right? They say that when you win, you become comfortable and you start wanting things to be done a certain way. And
Yeah.
look, those 8 years where he comfortably had the fastest car, I think it made him a bit comfortable. And when you're in that zone, it starts hurting you. I think Lewis is, honestly, he's lucky that Mercedes did not put George earlier. They did not put him in 2020 or something. They didn't put either an Ocon in 2019 or 2018 because that
there was
reality.
There was a chance of putting him in 2021.
Exactly.
Like,
and it was Claire Williams who kind of stepped in with the whole contract thing, and
but like if that didn't happen, Lewis, it wouldn't have come down to Abu Dhabi. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Verstappen would have been done. Verstappen would have won the championship because George would have taken a lot of points off of Lewis that year.
Yeah, and you don't know who would have been the lead driver. Honestly, I don't think you would have known because Lewis made a lot of mistakes that season, and
the bashing on George this year is quite funny as well, especially from like a variety of fans. But like when you think about like George is clearly very adaptable because remember Sakir jumped in,
almost pole, almost won.
Yeah, and it was
not.
It was actually,
either.
and it wasn't. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It wasn't like he threw the win away. Mercedes threw the win away.
Yeah,
there was always that
was
conspiracy as well. That did they like not want him to win on because it was a very unusual Mercedes fuck up as well. Like it was very odd.
They had soft tires on the left side and hard tires on the right side or something. I was like,
it was
what the
very
fuck is
unusual.
going on?
And even then, he still
bullshit.
And even then, he still like he got the
fourth
podium,
or fifth, something.
Or
no, he was fourth
because he had to. But crazy. Anyway, what's next on our list?
Sorry, just to sum up for Ferrari as well. That car was fast. Or either Charles Leclerc was fast in that car.
Charles was fast, yeah.
Yeah, because by the time Charles
drove a tractor. I think that car was slower than a Haas, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
even though half of it is actually Ferrari. Half of the Haas is Ferrari. Yeah. And it was 10 seconds when Charles finally got ahead of Lewis. And I think it was by the end of the second, when they had the second pit stop, the gap was still 10 seconds. The gap did not move at all. And I think Fred Visser also admits one thing. He said, if we can sort out our qualifying, we might start winning races. And I think he's right. Yeah. I think if the qualifying is sorted, I think they can win. I didn't expect Ferrari to be this good this weekend because last time around...
Did they bring a lot of upgrades?
No, not much. They'll be bringing upgrades in, I think, Silverstone. So a couple of races from now.
Yeah.
And that's when the things are finally... Okay, finally, just to wrap things up on Lewis before we step ahead, do you think Ferrari should end the contract at the end of the season?
No, I think they should and will keep it for next year. I think it makes sense to keep continuity for next year. I'm sorry, Hamilton fans, but I just don't think they should have signed it. I think this is one of those situations where, apart from Hamilton fans, every other fan saw this coming, and it's kind of like, how did Ferrari not see this coming? A
lot of Hamilton fans also saw this coming. By the way, Coffee Head, one of our subscribers, he was petrified at the fact that Lewis was going to end up at Ferrari, and he's been proven right. Just like almost everyone with even a half a cell. It was just so obvious because it just that statement that I said earlier it was obvious. If you can't beat Russell at Mercedes, you're not beating Leclerc at Ferrari, and it was just going to get worse. And this is a painful. Honestly, the way Michael ended his career, it wasn't this painful because he was slow. You knew it, but he was slow in his first season. He almost outscored Rosberg in his second season. Again, there were reliability issues in the last 2-3 races when it just went away from him. In the final season, he was at par with Nico or quicker, and he was 43 years of age. And you know how he did that? He did that by adapting to the car, to the changes, to everything. But Schumacher Schumacher was a worker, though. He was very much a worker. Like, he went to Ferrari knowing it would be a project. He worked with the engineers. He adopted his style. He was there. Like, Lewis just...
Like Lewis just isn't that guy. He's very, very talented, but he's never been the guy who goes and spends the night with the engineers looking at shit. He's not that guy.
Spends the night with the engineers, like Brad Pitt does in that movie.
Yeah, like Vettel, like they did in the 70s. Like Vettel was very much that guy because he took that from Schumacher as well. Like Vettel would go and spend hours in engineering meetings and stuff, like
something that James Wall said, that Michael knew every engineer's name, their birthdays, their families, their kids, everything. From
that was his style. That was his style. Yeah. And that for me as well, I think the difference with Schumacher is when Schumacher's legacy got, if you want to say it, got hurt by that Mercedes stint. I think why it didn't really for me is because there was that clear cutoff of 2006 ends. Schumacher goes out almost on top because he was still very much in that fight in 2006.
He would have won the championship if not for that the blowout in Japan. If the engine didn't blow out, he would have won.
He was right at the top when he went out, and the Mercedes period to me feels very much like calling a friend, will you come and help us out? It doesn't really feel like Schumacher was trying to prove anything. He's like, yeah, I'll come in and give you guys a hand. That's what it felt like. It was I think the difference is with Vettel, it felt the same way at Aston somewhat for Vettel.
The only thing was 2022, right?
Yeah. It was just he was just around to kind of help out, not trying to do anything with it. But I think any legacy Vettel left was kind of already killed by Ferrari anyway. And I don't really care because I'm a Vettel fan, so I'm like, whatever, But Hamilton is it's not going to get. I'd be very surprised if it gets better in 26. To be honest, because I think
I'm worried. I'm actually worried.
I think by the end of this year, his confidence will be dead. I think Ferrari will have killed it.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen? What I fear is going to happen as the Ferrari gets better. The gap between Lewis and Leclerc is only going to become bigger and bigger and bigger, because that's the same thing that happened with George. What happened at the start of the season is Mercedes was dead fourth, and they would fight for seventh and eighth. So you don't see much in points. As soon as Mercedes gets better, Lewis is still finishing 8th, George is in 4th. Lewis is finishing 6th, George is winning. I think we are going to see this with Leclerc and Lewis again.
It's
I
because
can see it happening.
It's the same reason you can see, for example, Tsunoda getting so close.
He was half a second slower, by the way. Half a second per lap. Lewis compared to Charles.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
It's the same thing. The problem is as the limits get higher, if you can't access that limit, the limit just gets further and further away from you. So we see it with different drivers. Like Tsunoda this season is a perfect example of Tsunoda's quite good in free practice, even in Q1, for example. And then as they start, the closer they get to that limit, Max keeps going further and further towards it, and Tsunoda's just stuck because he can't access it. Yeah. So it's just the way it is.
Yeah, let's see. By the way, after the amount of shit we've given Ferrari, they might still end up finishing second in the championship because Mercedes and Red Bull, they have dreadful second drivers right now. And Kimi Antonelli has not been having a good time recently. It's taken a dip. Hadjar has taken over as the more promising rookie this season, which is surprising.
The amount of memes of put Hadjar in the car, and he's like, no, why would you do this to me?
Why? By the way, anyone saying that, why do you hate him? Don't do that.
Yeah.
Anyways, we are 1 hour into the pod, and now let's talk about the most important thing this season, which is a title fight, which we are coming to after an hour.
We did kind of talk about it at the start, to be fair.
So this was not okay. First of all, after qualifying, I thought that again Lando kind of fucked things up for himself in the head. His final lap was entirely him just making too many mistakes because he was pushing too much.
He pushed too hard in the first sector and just threw all of it away at the end then. Yeah.
The tires were overheating and that's it. Done. However, the race was different. And I think what the race showed is that Oscar had the legs on Lando in terms of performance. This was not a case of Lando making mistakes and stuff and everything. This was a clear case of Oscar being faster. Yeah. Because the best example is the restart. As soon as the restart happened, within a couple of laps, Oscar was gone. And again, you could see it in the restart. Oscar just pulled away a seamless restart. Lando was caught napping.
Yeah.
It's happening a lot. And, we tend to talk about one thing when we talk about the McLaren drivers. One is fast, one has everything but fast. That's how we kind of summed it up at the start of the season when we are previewing it. What has happened is Lando has remained to be a fast driver, but still mentally fragile. Oscar, who was a mentally strong driver, has become as fast as Lando, and he's become a more complete driver. And right now, he's amongst the best drivers in Formula One.
Yeah.
And Lando has an uphill task in front of him.
There-
Because, yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say the reason I think it's over as well for Lando is just that I think like what'll happen, and I can see this happening over the next few races, is that what'll happen is as the pressure comes off Lando, right, because Oscar gets a bit of a lead, Lando will start getting faster again and start challenging Oscar again because the championship pressure will be, he'll be like, well, it's gone. You know, I'm not going to win this. He'll start getting better. And then as soon as he gets within a few points, the championship's back on. And all of a sudden it's just gone. Whereas Oscar just continues. Like, Oscar even seems to be just playing around with drivers now as well, as what I've noticed. Because, like Oscar's lead off the line is realistically what caused Verstappen to be a bit caught off, because not only was he caught off by the hard tires and he was having that conversation, he was on the radio instead of focusing on the restart. He was on the radio and Oscar just fucking slammed on the brakes and Verstappen nearly crashed into Lando. Like, you know, and then he was gone.
Is that allowed, by the way? The way he kind of executed
as soon as the safety car lights come on, you control it. So
but
you could say it as dangerous driving, but in reality, Lando was able to stop clearly behind, so the blame just comes on Verstappen. He was on the radio at that point, so it's like, well, you should have been paying attention. You know, like it's kind of because like if it was Verstappen right behind Oscar, then maybe you could have a call for it. But because Lando was able to stop, then it's like, well, I mean, everyone else stopped fine. Why couldn't you? You know, so that's going to be the argument there. But yeah, Oscar is just getting better and better and better. And I think that the problem now is that even if Lando gets his pace back, gets his groove back, it's not like he's going to be, 3-4 tenths ahead. It's going to be a tenth. And that's where just Oscar just will mentally destroy him.
Yeah.
Like, the simple fact for me is we've seen Oscar race Max and he's made Max work. So if Oscar can make Max work, he's going to destroy Lando. Yeah, that's just...
Remember we talked about this. And, I tend to go back when we did the preview and everything. And the only question I had was, could he make up those couple of tenths? I mean, that was the only gap that was our question at
the start of the season, right?
Yeah, if he can make up those couple of tenths, he'll probably win the championship, and he's made up those couple of tenths.
The thing for me is, this is like the problem that I think is everyone else has now, like Lando and Max has now, right? Is that Lando, I think, will fall to the pressure, right? So I think that's a problem. And the other issue is this is now reverse of Max last year with Lando, where Max could basically play all the aggressive games he wants because if anyone crashes or if they crash, Max came out on top.
Yeah.
Oscar now has that with Max. And Oscar will be happy to play those games. So like if there's a race where Lando qualifies fifth,
Oscar
right?
can't, right?
No, but he will though.
Because Max is not his direct competitor.
Sure,
Lando is.
But I don't know though. I think over the course of the season, like he's not going to think of it that way.
You think so?
Well,
depends. I think it'll come down to.
Let me rephrase this. If he's racing Lando, he'll be more cautious. One, because it's a teammate, and two, because it's a direct competitor. If it's racing Max, he will play those games with Max because he knows that Max will have more to lose. So I think Oscar will do that. I think Oscar will happily play those games. So if Max decides to go...
if Oscar and Max battle it out and both of them have a double DNF, Lando wins.
Sure. But I think Oscar will play whoever he's playing on track at that point,
Okay.
Like Oscar doesn't seem to care about, like, everything he talks about. He's not talking about the championship. He's not talking about one win. Oscar does seem to have the same mentality that is the best of Verstappen, which is we're talking about this weekend and this race. So he just plays whatever game is being played that weekend and that race. And then everything else, like it's the Max Verstappen mentality of like the last few years, which is if I just focus on this weekend and this moment, then as long as I keep putting those together, the championship will kind of take care of itself. Yeah. And Oscar doesn't seem to be that concerned about the championship. He's just, I'm just racing this weekend.
He's been there, done it, right? I think that also F2 champion, F3 champion, both of them intense championships. And we might be seeing the best of Oscar finally.
His racing against Max in Miami for me was just a highlight so far this season. Yeah. Like, I mean, like his start today was brilliant, but the way putting Max Verstappen under pressure is just so difficult. And he did it. So. He did it. And that's incredible. I'm really hoping that Red Bull have a few races where Max and Oscar get to go like toe to toe, because it's going to be
Austria. Austria's going to be one of them, right?
It's going to be fun. And the other thing is, I want to see the same with Leclerc, because Leclerc is a brilliant wheel-to-wheel driver.
Yeah. Look, if Ferrari somehow gets the qualifying... if somehow Ferrari gets the qualifying in place, and it's
a big if. Yeah.
And it is neck and neck with Red Bull and McLaren. I still cannot count Leclerc out of a championship fight unless Ferrari fucks up, which is probably the most. Yeah,
he's very far off now, though, isn't he? Like, that's the problem.
He is, but it's 16 races left. There are a lot of races.
The Max now as well is closer to George in the championship than he is to Norris,
I think right? Leclerc jumped George in the championship already.
No, George is fourth.
George is fourth. I think the gap closed, probably something.
It's because George is on 113, I think, and Max is on like 120. So I can find it now.
Yeah, take a look.
But yeah, I think he's very, very close. Or is it standings? So
137, 111, and 94.
Yeah. So George is closer to Max than Max is to Lando, I think, right? If my maths are correct. Yeah. And to be fair to Lewis, he's not going for his 8th, so that's good. 8th in the championship, I mean.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe Saber finds some form and, things happen.
Look, the good thing about this season is I think that the fun part is that even if... oh, God, sorry. I just clicked on Twitter for some reason. Do you truly believe Charles would have won 21, 22, 23, and 24 in a Red Bull?
Yeah.
I think 21, I'm not sure. Probably, though. 22, 23, and 24, yes. I absolutely do.
21, 22, 23, 24. Take it from me.
Yeah. I'm just going to reply to that real quick, actually, and just say yes.
Oh, God.
So
I think for Lando, at least, I think there's one good thing in all of this, and that is that he's still not throwing away points that he was doing so earlier. So he's still there. What would be worrying him right now is last 2 seasons in Barcelona, he thrashed Oscar like anything. It was 25 seconds gap between the two of them. And this time around, Oscar beat him. So on tracks where Lando is supposed to have an advantage, he's losing. Yeah. That does not bode well if you're talking about if there are 16 more races in the championship. I think that's the worry bit.
Yeah.
Let's see. Look, the thing is, it's not. We've said it.
It's not over. We've got a long championship. Yeah, we've got a long championship ahead. Yeah. I just think that I think Max is like far enough adrift now that I think he's going to be under pressure most weekends, and I think that he's going to really need to maximize every weekend. If Max has even one more weekend like this, he's truly just put himself completely out of contention. And then the problem I have with Norris is that I think anytime Norris gets a sniff of the championship, his brain will start melting, because it just seems to be that way. So I think Oscar will close this one up pretty.
Yeah. No, I don't think he'll do it easily or soon. I think it's going to.
I still think it'll come down to the first races. Yes, I was going to say I still think it'll come down to the last 3 races.
Yeah.
But I think Oscar will be measured and controlled of this. Oscar just has that mentality, and it's just his mentality. I genuinely think Oscar is mentally more robust than Max at this point. Like,
I don't think so.
mm,
After the kind of season that 2021 was, where Max won, I don't think I've seen many drivers do that.
fair enough. But I think
That was a
like
lot.
put it this way: if Oscar's in Max's position today and he sees the hard tires, Max's response was to go mental about it. Oscar's response would have been, "Well, that's a bit shit, mate." That was a British accent for some reason. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, he would have been like, "Well, that's a bit shit." You know, like that would have been it. So
That's it. Yeah.
he just doesn't. I haven't seen him excited about a win yet. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that's actually true.
He just wins and
He's
he's
got
like,
7
"Oh,
wins
brilliant!"
by the way now.
Yeah, yeah. And
that's-
just every time he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, good show today, guys." There's no yes, yeah, that was. It was just good show,
He'll get
guys.
there, right? I think it will be.
If he
I
wins a
think for now-
championship and his response over the line is, "Yeah, it was a good year, guys," I'm going to be pissing myself laughing.
And I wouldn't be surprised.
Neither would I. Neither would I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the reason why we got emotions out of Kimi when he won the championship was because of how unlikely the way he won it was.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, we won't have, because I have not seen Kimi being that reactive.
This is
unless-
Raikkonen, by the way, not Antonelli.
Yeah, the
for
Kimi,
anyone.
Kimi Raikkonen, the champion one. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, let's see. I don't think it's going to be very one-sided, but if we have to favor someone, I think it might be Oscar. Because I expected Lando to string together at least 2 to 3 races. He hasn't done that. Let's see what happens. With
I
him.
thought Lando would win this weekend. I thought he'd be
Me
on a
too.
high, and
I thought Max would win this weekend. That was my pick, but
I actually, sorry,
Yeah.
yes, I did think because I think in the last podcast, I think I said Red Bull would be fastest.
yeah, I thought
yeah.
so. I mean, until Friday, I was correct, because the longer and short.
I think the trouble now is going to be, I don't think the Red Bull is going to be particularly. It'll be competitive, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the McLarens in Canada.
In Canada,
Yeah, I don't
they'll
think
be
so.
good. Canada,
I
they'll
don't
be
think
good.
so.
Why so? Traction zones, traction zones and the fast speed sections. Red Bull was decent enough last time as well. I think Max won, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, he won because of a safety car. He was lucky. He got handed the win.
Yeah.
Just like he got handed the championship because he was driving the fastest car, obviously. Honestly, he's just a Newey merchant. So
Might be the case.
hasn't won a championship since Newey left. So
True. That's true.
because like last year it was a Newey car, obviously, so that doesn't
Exactly.
count.
This
So-
one is also right to a large extent.
If he wins this year, he's not a Newey merchant. If he loses this year, he's a Newey merchant. as
If he
far as I'm
wins,
concerned.
if he wins the championship this season, he'll have to do a lot of things right, and he might be in my list. He'll be the second greatest driver in Formula One after Michael. That's how. If he wins the championship, because it'll take a lot, and he can.
if he loses the championship this year, I'm putting him below Hamilton.
Yeah, for now I do put him below Hamilton.
Joking.
Yeah, I do. I mean, look,
Okay.
Lewis is a 7-time world champion. Yeah. Anyways, moving on from this, let's talk about the more interesting bit, the midfield. Saber, where the fuck
course,
did that
yeah.
pace come from?
Well, I mean, this is clearly just Hülkenberg showing that he's a better driver than Max Verstappen and Hamilton combined.
Yeah,
I mean that's the
I agree.
obvious. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it will be a bit of a pity, because what's going to happen, I can see how his career ends, right? Because he's also almost 40. And
Is he?
He's 3 years younger than Lewis, if I'm not wrong, and Lewis is 41.
Hülkenberg. Let's see. I'll tell you now.
Hulkenberg and Vettel are the same age.
37. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he's
Oh,
also
God.
getting high.
I'm like, oh, he's getting old now for Formula One. And I look at it and he was born 2 years before me. He's only a year older than me. Fucking hell. I'm never going to be a Formula One world champion at this rate.
Yeah. Maybe there's
Screwed.
time. Right? I mean, if there's time for Alonso, there's time for everyone.
Unless I can get adopted by Stroll. That's my only option now.
I'll tell you about an interesting thing I heard about Lawrence. Not here, not on the pod, off
Okay.
So yeah,
It's
just
not
that-
about the fact that Lance punched the wall and that's why his hand is gone, is it? Because I've heard
that's
that
Lance.
as well.
I'm talking about Lawrence.
Oh,
There's
okay.
some development that has come up.
Oh, is this the thing you were telling me that you heard directly from Aston Martin that Lawrence and Alonso are having sex? I did hear this too. Could I get you on the record? I'm joking. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought you were going somewhere correct, but no,
No.
it has nothing to do with that. Yeah, I mean, just By the way Sauber has also improved. It has become better, right? It was
Well,
not entirely just the driver doing the whole thing.
They did bring an upgrade. They do seem to have gotten better. The strategy calls were better.
Yeah.
This track seemed to work for them as well, which was bizarre. I didn't expect that. The other thing is, and this I guess we'll have to see over the next few weeks, is remember that Sauber didn't have a flexible front wing. So I mean, the conspiracy is that all the other midfield teams were maximizing which is bollocks. Like, there's no way all the other teams
Alpine was behind this time around for this very reason, I guess. There was also a case with what's his name? Williams. Williams also struggled.
Williams, I don't think was anything to do with it. And I think even Albon joked about this, right? Albon was like, we're going to struggle this weekend and everyone's going to blame it on the front wing.
Yeah.
Like, he actually said this. Williams
Did he say that they'll be right or wrong?
No, he said no, it's nothing to do with that. We'll just Williams was always going to struggle here because in the it's the long high speed. They're good in high speed, but when it's like lengthened long high speed corners, that's when they start to struggle.
That's
and
where
this
McLaren
track is
gained
full
ground
of them.
on Red Bull.
Yeah. Which that's why we thought Red Bull would be fastest, because like Suzuka, for example, full of those. Strange.
Yeah, but again, very, very high temperatures.
But yeah, Sauber, I don't know. That's no idea.
What happened? By the way, he made up 15 or 16 places, whatever. I don't remember. I think
generational talent, I think, is the obvious answer.
Yeah. By the way, Sauber is now ahead of both Alpine and Haas in the championship, which is no mean feat, because they were dead last season. And look, a lot of people say a lot of things. Valtteri Bottas last season, he was uninspiring at Sauber. There's no two ways about it.
They've got two drivers who deliver this year every time.
Yeah,
let's just put it that way. They maximize the car. Hulkenberg always maximizes the car. He's brilliant. Bortoleto has been incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
I look. Obviously, it's not all down to the drivers. 90% is down to the cars, but it does need to be said that I don't think Joe and Bottas in any way maximized the car last year either.
No.
So,
I think, that was the big thing, right? Because the result that Hulkenberg put together in Australia, where in the wet he was, I think, P6 or P7, Bottas doesn't do that. And these are important results for Sauber, because at least, again, next year is going to be shit for them. Binotto has already admitted that Audi will not have the best power unit in Formula One next season.
Which means they'll have one of the worst.
No shit, Sherlock. We know that already.
But like when you're downplaying your expectations like that, you know you've got a bad power unit.
Exactly. Especially someone from Ferrari.
Yes. Yeah. Because Italians don't admit fault. So
he's Swiss.
Who is? Binotto? Binotto's Italian, isn't he?
He's Swiss.
Are you sure? I don't think so. Binotto's a very Italian name.
Gunther Steiner, where do you think he's from?
He's Swiss.
He's Italian.
Is he? Well, Binotto is Swiss-Italian.
Yep.
He's both.
Yeah, of course.
And he was born to Italian parents, so...
Yeah, cool.
He's Italian.
Okay. Yeah. Take it. Take the W. But yeah, I mean, the whole midfield has become very, very interesting. I'm slightly worried about Liam Lawson now, because Hadjar, instead of the earlier trend being that, okay, Lawson is not performing as well as he should, again, that is there. What is going on right now is Hadjar is starting to pull away even more. And whenever there's time to put together a stunning lap or an important lap, it's Hadjar that does that. Lawson does not.
So you're saying Lindblad in the car in 3
He won
races.
the feature race. He dominated this weekend quite comfortably. And
Alex Stone in for Lando as well, I think, is a good show. And I say that as an unbiased Irish person.
Right, I know. But he's leading the championship already, isn't he?
Yeah.
By the way, apparently he also opened up on the whole thing, what happened after Monaco, where the
No, it's just Alex Dunn's just basically the next Verstappen. I think we can all admit that freely.
And but the antics, yes. They are there.
Oh, I wasn't talking about the speed.
Yeah. That's what Victor Martin said, right? He thinks he's Max Verstappen when he just crashed into it and caused a huge pile up.
And he's leading the championship, so maybe he is,
He's good. He's good.
He actually is a very good racer, though. He just...
Yeah.
He
He's raw.
I'll,
And
I'll
I'm
put it.
fine
I'll
with
put it the same way that Max Verstappen fans say when Verstappen crashes into someone. He's uncompromising.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Because, look, next season, Lindblad is making it to F1.
I think Lindblad's in there, full stop.
Yeah.
And the obvious one to remove is going to be Lawson. You know,
Yeah.
the problem with Red Bull, to be honest, is they don't go back. And at the end of the day, like, if they had anyone else to put in, Lawson wasn't getting put back in that seat. Like, if they,
100%.
like if Tsunoda wasn't getting brought up and they didn't have, like, if they had someone else sitting in they would have put someone else in there.
Yeah.
Red Bull, once it's made up its mind, has made up its mind, and that's that. Like, they've written off a driver, and to be honest, Tsunoda's lucky that he wasn't written, like, there wasn't a better option earlier, or Tsunoda wouldn't be there. Tsunoda, unfortunately, was getting his career destroyed by this season at the moment, but
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't
Lawson
really see him
also,
going
right?
anywhere.
I mean, just look at the turnaround for Lawson, right? He started the season on cloud 9. He would be a Red Bull driver and so on. Next season, he might not even be in F1.
Me and Josh said, wouldn't it be hilarious if he had a 2014 Ricardo season?
Yeah.
That worked out well.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
A boy can dream.
I mean, yeah, the Kiwis can, but he's... Yeah. And Josh has stopped talking about Lawson. Like,
Yeah.
Fuck it. The poor kids had enough. Yeah. I think next season what's going to happen is we talked about it previously. Lindblad is going to make his way to RB. It's going to be a Hadjar Lindblad shootout. Whichever wins, they're probably getting the
Well,
promotion.
I mean, you say that. It depends where Max goes, because it could be...
If he goes
Max
right.
goes somewhere, Hadjar's in that Red Bull, let's be honest. Like,
Oh, for 2026.
yeah.
Max will be there. I don't think
so
Max.
too. I don't think Max is
He's
going
not.
anywhere.
He doesn't make these decisions foolishly.
No.
I mean, he has his temper tantrums here and there, but more or less he's smart enough to know what calls to make. But yeah. Now, Aston Martin, by the way, Alonso scored his first points. Bravo.
Yeah. It's about
For
time.
a change. Yeah.
Luckily,
All the bit-
Lance wasn't there, because Lance obviously would have beat him, obviously.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
it stops beating off a lot of other things. In the
Don't say beating off, that come on wrong. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Lance won't be beating off anything now that he's broken his hand. But
I mean,
yeah.
there are two hands just because of
Do you
that,
think
right?
he's ambidextrous? Okay. Anyway,
Could be.
that's a word I made up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should
Good
go in
one.
the dictionary, hopefully.
Finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about it then. Lance Stroll. So, if you're aware of the details, do you know what happened?
Basically, he got so annoyed was it yesterday after qualifying, that he basically went in swearing at people, punching the walls. And for anyone wondering, I have heard this from other people, and then Citrus posted it. I'm not getting my news from Citrus on Twitter before anyone
BBC.
comments.
It's from BBC.
Did BBC report on it as well? Okay.
Yeah.
I heard it from an engineer at Aston, so I'm not. Yeah, that's where Aston. See, luckily for me, I hear a lot of stuff about Aston early, and I'll tell you why. Because Aston was originally owned by an Irish guy, and there is still some random
lot of them are
Irish.
there.
Yeah, there's some Irish people floating about that I happened to have some whiskies with in Dublin a long time ago. That kind of, yeah. So yeah.
So apparently what happened is he was out qualified by half a second, if I'm not wrong, and he just came back into the garage, just blew his lid, apparently punched a few things and hurt his wrist or did something to it.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing was a lot of people coming on Twitter and saying that's why Alonso was beating it. And like, have you seen the last couple of seasons? It's like, joking about it is fine. Look, you can joke about the fact that, okay, Alonso was not beating him, but there are some facts that are actually there. And then this thing comes out. By the way, this thing comes out during the race. Perfectly timed. Yeah, Aston Martin knows how to put out stories. And by the way, this is not the top news in Formula One in any which way, even though this is massive. A driver losing his lid, cursing everyone, punching the walls and whatever, and breaking a lot of things, and apparently injuring himself is a big news, but nothing.
No.
And do you think he's had enough?
Yeah, like I think the thing is, it's just surely he must know that.
He sucks.
Yeah, that he's shit. But no, surely he must know, like, okay, this team is building towards having the best car next year, right? And surely he must know that, like, if, for example, Lawrence tried to play the game of, okay, well, let's get rid of Alonso and put like a B tier driver in the car. Well, actually, sorry, it's Stroll as the competition, so a G tier driver in the car, right? Nah, G is too nice. Z tier. Yeah. So, but basically, surely he knows that no matter what happens, like they're not dropping Alonso next year. And even if they did if Alonso dropped out for next year, that in order to keep the other investors happy, they have to put like a big name in the car. That's basically just anyone big, like, they go to Leclerc and say, surely, you want to accept our free therapy program, like something. Like there must be some way to get them over. So surely he knows that, like, even if they have the best car next year, he's not winning the championship, because Alonso, if Alonso gets a good car, Alonso's going to destroy him, like, hands down. He must know that, and maybe he's thinking to himself, maybe it's kind of that realization of, I just can't win. I'm not going to win. And because that's the time where you start, like, blaming other people. It's easy to kind of get annoyed. When you start blaming yourself, I think that's when people lose it completely. That admission of, oh, I'm a fucking asshole. That's the worst. So clearly that something's gone horribly wrong there. And they can't remove Alonso, I think, either, because if they remove Alonso, I reckon Nui goes. Like, I reckon Nui probably wants some driver decision, and I don't think, given Nui left Williams because of Hill, I think he'd be happy to leave Aston if they start, like, playing these decisions behind his back, Yeah. Now that he's a shareholder.
Alonso is not leaving in any which way. I think that's not even
unless Alonso decides to leave himself, he's not going.
Yeah.
So
I think it's just gotten to him. It's been a long time, right? 3 years being Fernando Alonso's teammate is not easy. It's not good. Even though Alonso has been cuddling him and cajoling him along the way throughout, he's been one of his biggest cheerleaders these days. Even Newey is cheering him. Yeah, you can do all of that, fine, but you're not. There's a reality to it. I think even Lance knows he's tried everything possible, and if an aging Alonso is someone he's being half a second slower, there's no future here. No. What are you going to do? Next season, let's assume Aston Martin has a great car. He'll be exposed in a worse manner. And that's obvious. That's going to happen. He might win a race, fine. He might win a couple of races, but he'll get thrashed in every other weekend. And after a point, it becomes, you can only lose so much, right? He has enough money. He can sit home for the rest of his life, do nothing. He'll be fine. Or he can pick up another hobby and do something, right? I mean, he might not now, right? The risk is so,
it's true. He's certainly not joining any wanking competitions anytime soon either. That's for sure. Maybe. Will that get us demonetized? Oh, we're not monetized. Doesn't matter. I can say whatever I want. Free pass. Did we mention the tape, brother? Right. So anyway, I think.
God,
I don't know. It just doesn't look good, because, like, even if, like, the problem is next year, even if they had a dominant car, he's just showing that he'd be like half a second off that pace at the very least anyway. And, like, that's if you're assuming, which I kind of am, that Alonso is getting the maximum out of the car. That means if they had a car that was 5/10 faster next year, he's still losing the championship. So
it's not only losing the championship, it's basically doing what Checo did in 2022, where he's a distant third in the championship. And again, it's only so much. Again, look, we can say a lot of things, and even we shit on Lance a lot. And we are probably not shitting on him as much as maybe a lot of other people do. And a lot of people do that. Once that continues to happen, it starts playing with your head. And I think there's only so much negativity he can take. It's been there, right? I think
it was just hard to ignore facts for a very long time.
Yeah,
I think is the problem, because the world has gotten very good at ignoring facts, right? We've become very, very good at ignoring facts as a species. But the problem is, when you're reminded of that fact every single fucking weekend, it starts to become a situation where you go, oh, well, this must be true then. you know. And I think, look, we see this with every. I know I use Daniel Ricciardo a lot, but Daniel Ricciardo is the most recent, biggest example of just an obvious. Daniel Ricciardo, like, I'm not saying Lance Stroll was good at one point. Can I just make that clear? But like Daniel Ricciardo, as I said, I remember I think James from Lakeside Drive, really brilliant guy. Check out that podcast if you want. He agreed when I said he's Australian, so obviously he would agree. But, you know, as I said to him, it was like, Daniel Ricciardo didn't go from being a really brilliant racing driver in Renault one year to being an absolutely dog shit racing driver in McLaren the next year. He couldn't adapt to the car, right? That's on him, obviously, and on McLaren for not kind of understanding their car as well. There's two sides to it, but mostly it's on Daniel. But then your confidence goes, because what happens is you keep thinking, no, I'm good enough to fix this. I'm good. And then eventually it's, I'm not good enough to fix this. And the moment that happens,
that's done.
And I think that's what's starting to happen to Lewis now. And I think as bad as it's happening to Lewis right now, it's going to get worse, you know? And like Lando is a great example of, look at how important mentality is in Formula One. Because if you're not mentally, like, if you don't genuinely believe you are the best driver on the grid,
Lando is
you never
the
will
most.
be.
I think the Lando is the perfect example of a driver who could be the best in F1, but he's just not mentally all there. And honestly, I've seen world champions and mentally they've been very tough. I don't remember the last time I saw a world champion who was mentally this weak.
I genuinely think that if you were to go for, like, going for one drink with a world champion would be fun. But I think if you hung out, if you're not a world champion or you're not like a guy like that, and you expected them to be a good person, like, I think most of Verstappen fans, for example, if they got a week to spend with Verstappen, they would fucking hate him by the end of the week. Because
100%.
The thing is, these guys, what I would like about that week is I want to see these. I like A players. Like, when I ran businesses before, we'd hire a person who's better than me at this skill. And I used to love watching those people at that skill, right? You've got to be that type of person. Yeah. Because if you're not willing to be destroyed competitively at everything, you will hate these people. Yeah. Because these people think they're better than you at everything all the time. And they, at not everything, but they're good at most things, you know, I'm sure. But yeah, that's the problem. And Lance has surely now realized that.
And I think there was a clip that went viral a few days back where I think it was the Esteban Ocon clip where it was during Monaco, where Lance was the only one who's standing alone in a corner on the bus during the driver parade, and Ocon pulled him in and brought him into the group. And then there was the same clip where it was Lando who was standing upset or something, and 5 other drivers were actually talking to each other, and Ocon just brought him into the conversation. It's like drivers, and I think Lance is starting to feel.
That's why Ocon will never be a champion, though.
Yeah,
he's too nice.
Yeah, that's the only
and
reason.
Inconsistent. That's the other main reason. Yeah,
exactly. I think Lance is starting to feel being left out on the grid. Because now there are no pay drivers in F1. Now there's driver you can actually say who is worse than Lance right now.
There is no driver on the grid. Yeah, if all cars being equal, there's not a single driver on the grid that wouldn't beat Lance, in my opinion. Now.
Yeah, I don't think so.
The grid is, to be fair, the grid is very fucking good at right now.
Yeah.
You know, like right now, like I get in arguments all the time with people who are talking about how, like we had this question last week, how like Verstappen's significantly better. I'm like, no, this grid is very, very close. That's what makes Verstappen impressive, to be honest, because you when you look
standing
good
out here.
Yes, this is not like some of the grids we've had in the past where half the grid are fucking useless. You know, like this is a very good grid of people. Yeah, I think and there's so many young, brilliant drivers as well now.
They're waiting, right? They're just waiting in the wings, just
to the point where actually, when people say that Alonso is holding up a seat, as much as I hate that, I do get that it is a fair argument at some point.
No, I don't think it is.
I don't agree with it personally, but I think
Alonso
you could make
is still one of the top 7 or 8 drivers in F1.
Sure, but you could make the argument in some ways because there are so many good drivers around. That it should be, let's get some young kids in or whatever.
It's not socialism, right?
I know, but I get the argument is my point. You know, there is a lot of people there. Lance has, but with Alonso, I would go down your route, which is arguing, no, but Alonso's still, you give Alonso a good car, Alonso's still fucking killing it. Yeah. Whereas there isn't that argument for Lance.
Yeah.
You know, there's just not.
By the way, just like Alonso, we saw it with Lance. He had 0 podiums that season. Alonso had 9,
Yeah,
if I'm not wrong.
yeah.
That should tell you everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, well, that's the pod done. That's all that we had. Well, a lot of talk about Max and Lewis and a bit of Lando. But yeah, at least
We will-
looking forward.
If we're doing this on Sundays going forward, which we are, because we're recording this on a Sunday, I'll probably get it out today as well if I can.
Yeah.
But be late for you, obviously. But
Pretty
just going
late.
forward, for anyone listening, we will next week maybe put up the question thing like on a Friday and get questions the whole way through the weekend.
Yeah.
So so we have a question because we don't have one now, obviously.
We don't have one now, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, we'll have that in place. The questions will be there. For now, we hope you liked the pod. Drop a comment, say hi, take care, and hope you had a great Spanish Grand Prix.
Yeah, and we'll see you for Canada predictions.
Which Max Verstappen fans, I'm guessing, didn't. So,
Oh,
shit happens, guys.
Last thing as well, if you are subscribed to this, we do have a new clips channel. I'll put the link in the description for anyone who likes random shorts and clips and stuff. It'd really help us out. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Wait. Even if you don't, go there, hit subscribe.
Yeah. And you were an ugly mofo. Subscribe. Yeah. Just trying to offend more people to get more subscriptions. Bye.